Hey everybody, Mary Lori Lightfoot has a potty mouth. The Iranian government says that they've found a CIA informant who is responsible for the death of Soleimani and they plan to execute him. We're hearing bizarre signals from space, and Senate Republicans have come up with their own plan on how to deal with police reform. All coming up on Contemporary. Okay, guys. First of all, sorry I'm a little bit late with this. It turns out I had a little bit of a doctor's appointment this morning that ran a little bit longer than I wanted to, so sorry about coming on late, but I've got some really interesting stories for you, so let's not waste any time and get right into it. The first headline today comes from NPR, written by Claudia Grisales, and she writes, led by Tim Scott, Senate Republicans begin drafting their own police reform plan. Um, I just love the way she wrote this, too. Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell tapped South Carolina Senator Tim Scott, the chamber's lone GOP black Republican, to put together a legislative package addressing the country's policing system. You have to mention that, he's the lone black Republican, of course. The plan would respond to the obvious racial discrimination that we've seen on full display on our television screens over the last 2 weeks, McConnell of Kentucky told reporters following a GOP luncheon to discuss the issue on Tuesday. The plan comes a day after Democrats, with the support of more than 200 co-sponsors, rolled out their plan to overhaul law enforcement departments across the country. Scott told reporters that he hopes Republicans can get the bill on the Senate floor before their July 4th break. Scott said Republicans are considering a proposal to increase training, focus on de-escalation tactics that would lessen the potential for chokeholds and other dangerous forms of police restraints. But Scott was clear his GOP colleagues aren't fans of the major items in the Democratic legislation, which includes bans of chokeholds and in cases of drug-related warrants, bans the uses of chokeholds, and in cases of drug-related warrants, no-knock warrants, he ruled out reform of the legal doctrine for police known as qualified immunity, the key provision in the bill unveiled by Democrats on Monday. That's unfortunate because I think that ending qualified immunity would be like the key piece in removing what is obviously a lack of accountability on the part of the police. So that's deeply unfortunate. I'm sure that there are major differences between the bills, but I think that both bills should probably include getting rid of qualified immunity. Let's read on. The South Carolina Republican said there's also talk about bringing more police departments under reporting requirements to the FBI and Justice Department. Today, only 40% are under such reporting requirements, and that needs to change. We'd all like to see agencies report, so we're going to provide either resources for it or perhaps reduce grants if they don't, Scott said. I think that makes sense, that if you don't, aren't willing to submit to some kind of review process, then you definitely shouldn't be receiving funding. So that's kind of an interesting thing that we're hearing, defund the police, which is coming largely out of the protesters on the left side. That and then when asked and when pressed on what defund the police means, it usually is answered or has been answered over the last day with the comment that, oh, we don't mean defund the police, we mean fund them, just fund them differently. I like the way that this is phrased a little better because it's not claiming that we're just going to defund the police. Though personally, as an anarchist, I think we could privatize the police, but that's another argument for another day. The GOP is also discussing setting up a commission to get a handle on concerns facing policing today. The plan would trigger the establishment of a National Police Commission study. Oh, good. So we can study what we know is going on already, so that we can figure out the best practices that can be used across all departments, and that we would at least direct funding and resources towards that direction. Okay. Scott also noted it's time to increase funding for police body cameras, which stands at less than $20 million today. I'd like to see that number grow significantly. So, it is kind of a misconception that all police are now required to wear body cameras. Quite a lot of places don't require it, or I guess they don't have the funding for it, so they say. And also, cops have the option to flip on and off their body cameras whenever they choose. I think that that's not something that is helpful, especially when we've seen cases of officers planting evidence and things like that, That body camera is to protect the officer, but it's also to protect the public from the officer, which, they're not saints. They do bad things. And so I think that, if you're a cop and you turn off your body camera, that should be it. You're in this position where you hold authority and you hold power over people's lives, and you can snuff their lives out in an instant. So yeah, you have to be held to a higher standard than some other jobs. Like, there are other dangerous jobs where they deal with like agitated, confused, drunk, upset people all the time, and they don't end up killing them. In fact, they're quite good at de-escalation. So I think that focusing training on de-escalation could be beneficial. There are cases, this wasn't technically one of the articles because it was written in 2018, but this town, Camden, they actually put out this 18-page policy that their officers are required to follow, and they've instituted this in 2018, where use of force, things like chokeholds and forceful restraints and things like that, are to be a use of last resort. Like if there are absolutely no other options. And I didn't read the entire 18-page document, which you can read if you go to this article. It is linked in the article right here. But it spells out extremely clearly to the officers when they can and when they can't use force. And I think that that's something that's sort of lacking in a lot of police policy today, is it's not specific. A lot of times it's left up to the officer's discretion. Between one person and another, you can have a guy who's a giant a-hole, or somebody who's going to, use his discretion properly. And obviously that is way too much leeway for a job position where you're carrying around a gun and deciding who lives and dies, basically, with that gun. So I favor this. I don't think it's everything that could be done, but I'm glad to see that some motion is being put forward. And it saddens me that we've got competing bills, because it's like y'all can't work together to get. Why don't you pick out the two things, go through both of the bills, find the things that both of the bills contain, add ending qualified immunity, add ending no-knock warrants, and then sign that bill, because that's the bipartisan bill. The rest of it is politics that y'all are disagreeing on. So that's just my opinion. Let's move on to the next story. It's a little more fun. Mayor Lori Lightfoot has a potty mouth. I don't know if you guys saw this video. It was all over Twitter yesterday, where her and an alderman from her area got into a really foul-mouthed discussion. They were having a telephone conference, and things got a little bit hairy. I don't think they have, they do have the audio here. I don't know how long it is. The initial audio that was on Twitter was like 2 minutes long, but I'm going to read you the article, and then I'll describe some of the things that were said in the audio. This comes from Chicago CBS affiliate. And as looters were ransacking businesses through the city more than a week ago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Alderman Raymond Lopez of the 15th, one of her harshest critics, engaged in an angry, foul-mouthed argument over the city's handling of widespread violence. During a conference call with 50 aldermen on May 31st to discuss the city's response to looting, Lopez accused the mayor of being unprepared when looting spread from downtown to the neighborhoods that weekend. Looters pillaged shops through the city as peaceful protesters were taking to the streets in the last weekend of May in memory of George Floyd, who died as police officers pressed a knee to Floyd's neck for several minutes during the arrest on Memorial Day in Minneapolis. Whew. Rehashing that whole story. The mayor convinced Governor J.B. Pritzker to deploy 375 members of the Illinois National Guard to support Chicago police on May 31st, primarily by helping the district restrict access to the Loop, which I guess is access, road access. A source provided by CBS 2 with audio conference. This was the conference call with the mayor. Held with the alderman that day, in which Lopez said the mayor's office needed to come up with a better plan to protect neighborhoods in the coming days. Quote, when downtown is in lockdown, our neighborhoods are next, and our failure to fully get ready for what's going on in the neighborhoods let me try to start that again. Quote, when downtown is in lockdown, our neighborhoods are next, and our failure to fully get ready for what's going on in the neighborhoods. We're seeing this destruction. We're thinking this is going to somehow end tonight. We have seen where in other cities this has gone on for days. We need to come up with a better plan. We need to come up with a better plan for days, at least the next 5 days, to try and stabilize our communities, Lopez said. The alderman said that parts of the back of the yards and Brighton Park neighborhoods in his ward were a virtual war zone. And, you know, we've all seen the videos of the riots going on. I mean, a war zone is an accurate description. We can't expect our police, and I don't fault them at all for being able to control this, he said. Half our neighborhoods are already obliterated. It's too late. Lopez said he feared looters would eventually start targeting homes, which many have said they would, after ransacking businesses throughout the city. Quote, once they're done looting and rioting, whatever's going to happen tonight, God help us, what happens when they start going after the residents, going into the neighborhoods, once they start trying to break down people's doors, which we've seen videos of in Washington. Once they start trying to break down people's doors if they think they've got something, he said. We know that people, continuing to quote, we know that people are here to antagonize and incite, and you've got them all pumped up today. They're not going to go home and go to bed at 8 o'clock. They're going to turn their focus on the neighborhoods. I've got gangbangers with AK-47s walking around right now, just waiting to settle some scores. What are we going to do? What do we tell the residents other than good faith people stand up? It's not going to be enough, Lopez added. When Lopez finished talking on the conference call, Lightfoot declined to respond and tried to move on to another question and another alderman. She actually, what she did say, she said, thank you, next question, literally. And he was like, no, I want an answer. It's not something you ignore. This is a question I have, Lopez said. That's when the call turned profane. I think you're 100% full of, is what I think, Lightfoot said. Lopez was infuriated. F you then. Who are you to tell me I'm full of? Maybe you should come out and see what's going on. So yeah, that was the really heated. They were, F you this, and I think you're full of S that, and yeah, it got really heated. The mayor vehemently denied protecting downtown at the mayor vehemently denied protecting downtown at the expense of the neighborhoods. If you think you're not ready and we stood by and let the neighborhoods go up, there's nothing intelligent I can say to you. That is probably true. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard, and I understand you want to preen. Mayor, quote, Mayor, I need you to check your effing attitude. That's what I need you to do, Lopez shot back. At this point, several other aldermen injected in an effort to calm nerves, with one alderman telling Lopez, Ray, cut it out, please, calm down. So, they went on back and forth for a few minutes. It didn't get more polite from there. But the truth of the matter is that this man had a legitimate question about what they were going to do to protect the citizens in his charge, in his ward, where he was responsible for. So he was actually, to my shock, a politician who was actually trying to do something to care about his people. He was worried about the people that he is representing. It sounds to me like she took it extremely personally. And especially in that statement, if you think we just... where is it? Shoot. Yeah, if you think we're not ready and we just stood by and let the neighborhoods go up, there's nothing intelligent I can say to you. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard. So to me, that sounds like she just took it really personally. If you think that we're not ready, we just stood by. Well, yeah, I do think you weren't ready. And it does seem like you stood by. And you're getting called out on it, and so you're taking personal offense to it. Mayor Lori Lightfoot, it is not very mayoral to swear at your alderman, and you fully deserved that FU that he shot back at you. So that's my opinion on that. And, but she looks like she eats people, so don't tell her I said that. The next story is a Massachusetts cops, and this comes from the Daily News. The New York Daily News, sorry, by Meg Wagner. And it's a Massachusetts cop's wife faked a home invasion and blamed Black Lives Matter activists. You're talking about like a lot of hate crimes that get faked. I almost nowadays when people come out and say, oh, these people did this and they were European. If they like specifically name what type of person it was that did the thing to them, I'm instantaneously suspicious. I'm like, no, they didn't. You did that. Also, they spray painted Black Lives Matter BLM on the side of her home after robbing her. That doesn't, I mean, she didn't think in her own mind that that would seem suspicious, but okay. So this cop's wife, a Massachusetts police officer's wife, faked a robbery and vandalized her own home and blamed the alleged crime on Black Lives Matter activists. So obviously, Maria Daly faces charges of filing a false police report and misleading police investigation. Faux burglary she staged earlier this month, CBS Boston reported. Daly, who is married to an officer in the Millbury Police Force, claimed in an October 17th police report that robbers busted into her home, stole her jewelry and cash in the middle of the night. Burglars spray painted BLM, short for Black Lives Matter, on the side of the house before dashing off with about $10,000 worth of loot, all of which was fully insured, I'm sure. We woke up to not only our house being robbed while we were sleeping, but to see this hatred for no reason, she wrote on Facebook after the reported crime to the cops. The cop's wife continued, quote, "If you would have asked me yesterday about this Blue Lives and Black Lives Matter issue, my response would have been very positive. Today, on the other hand, I have so much anger and hate that I don't like myself." You probably don't like yourself because you are a trifling hoe, but let's read on. Officials grew suspicious when details of the investigation didn't add up. Yeah, anyone... Black Lives Matter, but I'm gonna spray it on the side of a home I just robbed because I just really want you to hate black people. Like, that doesn't seem crazy. Obviously, you know, good for the Millbury Police Department, who instantaneously knew that this one smelled of fish. Officials grew suspicious. Something wasn't quite right, Millbury Police Chief Donald DeSorcy? All right. Why y'all got such complicated names? Millbury Police Chief Donald Sorcy told the TV station, quote, "I think that was pretty obvious, and as a result of the investigation, the officers did their due diligence and followed through. That's what they're supposed to do. Followed through with the investigation that we had. Daly's husband was not involved in the faux crime and has not been charged, though I'm sure he's embarrassed as shit." DeSorcy and Daly Daly was likely motivated by her family's financial problems. Aww, that's so sad. That's so sad that you had to frame black people. And I mean, I would say in the middle of a crisis, but this actually happened back in October. So it's like stuff wasn't quite going on like it is right now when she did this. But at the same time, it's like, wow, like, not, you're a bad person. I don't normally even say that. Like, I know that people like good people do bad things, and like people make mistakes, and you know, it doesn't make them bad people. This is a bad person. Like, awful, awful, awful. Hilarious, but awful. Also, the idea that her husband wasn't involved in any way, I find that to be a little bit bullshit, because she says, we woke up to find the house had been vandalized. So she, in the middle of the night, did this all on her own, and her cop husband had nothing to do with it? The same cop husband who was having the same financial troubles that she was? Okay. That's just my little theory here. But on the other side of the fence, two men decided to pose as cops and steal $150,000 in daytime jewelry in middle of a daytime jewelry heist. That's ballsy. So not only are cops' wives pretending that fake robbers are coming to get her, these men are pretending to be fake cops so that they can be robbers. So this comes from ABC News by John Hayworth, who writes that two men who posed as NYPD officers and robbed a New York City jewelry store in a brazen daytime heist have been arrested. The incident occurred the afternoon of June 6th when two men, 59-year-old Ismail Iguana? I don't know. Igatura? I'm really bad with names, you guys. I'm sorry. I don't mean to butcher your name, dude. Ismail. Ismael from Queens and 59-year-old Jose Rodriguez from the Bronx allegedly entered a jewelry store on the Upper East Side of Manhattan in New York dressed as an NYPD officer and identified themselves as cops to the owner of the store. Iguarta and Rodriguez asked for permission to enter the jewelry store and requested to examine the store owner's properly permitted firearm, claiming that due to the recent looting of commercial establishments in New York, firearms were at risk of being stolen. According to a statement released by the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Southern District of New York, the jewelry store owner proceeded to hand over his firearm. Lord, I'm gonna keep it down until I read the rest of this article. The jewelry store owner proceeded to hand over his firearm for the alleged inspection when the suspects, who were armed with 2 firearms of their own, reportedly restrained and tied up the store owner and subsequently stole his firearm along with a number of pieces of jewelry that totaled over $150,000. Igarta and Rodriguez were apprehended a short time later in a subway station several blocks from the location of the heist. God, why is everyone so dumb? Everyone in this situation is dumb. My God. U.S. Attorney Geoffrey S. Berman stated, quote, as alleged, the defendants participated in a brazen daytime robbery in which the victim was threatened at gunpoint and tied up. The defendants' alleged scheme, impersonating NYPD officers and asking to check the victim's firearm due to recent incidents of looting, took advantage of uncertain conditions in our community, preying on the fears of a small business owner and his trust in law enforcement. The alleged criminal conduct is intolerable, and thanks to the work of the NYPD and the FBI, the defendants face significant federal charges for their crimes. Seems like they didn't get very far away from the crime scene, so, Igarta and Rodriguez were each charged with 1 count of robbery conspiracy, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison, 1 count of robbery, which carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in prison. Yeah, they wrote that twice. Okay, that wasn't me. 1 count of brandishing a firearm, which carries a maximum sentence of life in prison, and 1 count of being a felon in possession of a firearm, which carries a maximum sentence of 10 years. Wow. These guys are kind of old, too, so yeah, they're going to be in prison for the rest of their life. NYPD Commissioner Dermot Shea said, posing as a police officers to prey on a city business during an international pandemic, as alleged, is dangerous to civilians, law enforcement officers. Arrests like these highlight the indispensable work of our NYPD detectives and federal partners in ensuing justice for New Yorkers. So, I have so many things to say about this article. First of all, the cops are not showing up to inspect your firearms. If somebody ever shows up and tells you that they're a cop there to inspect your firearm, I mean, I would sincerely question that, if not go call the cops on those people. And then you hand your gun over to them. I mean, like, this is insanity. In Georgia's a little bit different than New York. We don't have to register our guns here. So if a cop showed up at my business or at my door saying that I needed to show my gun to him, I'd just slam that door in his face. And it would be rightly so. They have no reason without a warrant to come examine any of your property at all. And then secondly, we had a few years back here, and I don't think the guy ever got caught. There was a guy going around posing as a police officer, and he would pull women over in their cars, and then he would sexually assault them. And because there's pretty much this attitude in our culture that if a cop tells you to do something, you need to obey or you'll be shot or killed, we have people who can use this. And if they bust into a door of someone's home during a home invasion and scream that they're the police, these homeowners are going to be disarmed. Just mentally, they're going to be disarmed and think, I can't shoot back at these cops. Like, so this is something, pretending to be a cop is something that people have been doing for a while. And it shows a kind of like underlying problem in our societal attitude toward police, that they're permitted to do everything and anything. They're permitted to pull a woman over in the dark of night on the side of a lone road. We've always gotten that advice, at least I did as a woman when I was younger, that if you were getting pulled over and it was a long road with no lights and there's no one around, call 911, tell them to inform the officer behind you that you're waiting to pull up to a safe gas station where other people are. I've heard of people trying to do that, and then the cop still absolutely freaks out on them, which is, kind of par for the course when dealing with police officers. But at the same time, just absolute implicit trust in the goodness of everyone in a law enforcement uniform is the bad way to run your life. And, this store owner, unfortunately, learned that sad lesson, and I'm sure he will no longer turn over any firearm over to anyone, and probably, won't trust everyone he sees in a police uniform from here on out. So that was an expensive lesson for him. Moving on. This comes from Business Insider from yesterday, from Mitch Prothero. Iran says that it has found the CIA informant who helped the U.S. assassinate Qasem Soleimani and has sentenced him to death. Holy shit. Let's see. Iran announced on Tuesday that it had convicted and planned to execute an Iranian citizen accused of helping the U.S. assassinate its revered General Qasem Soleimani. The news was reported by Reuters, which cites a press conference that aired on Iranian TV. Soleimani was killed by a U.S. drone strike in Baghdad, Iraq, in January. That was so crazy when that happened. He was famous in Iran for his role in leading the foreign military operations for Iran's Revolutionary Guard. His killing pushed the U.S. and Iran to the brink of war. Are you kidding me with this? I'm going to try it, you guys. Ghulam Hussein Ismaili? Maybe? A spokesman for the Iran Judicial Service said at the conference that officials had identified Mahmoud Mousavi Majad as the culprit in Soleimani's death. Ismaili described him as a spy for the CIA and Israel's Mossad security agency, and said he had already been sentenced to death. Mahmoud Mousavi Majad, one of the spies for the CIA and Mossad, has been sentenced to death, Ismaili said, adding that he shared information about the whereabouts of the martyr Soleimani with our enemies. He passed on security information to the Israeli and American intelligence agencies about Iran's armed forces, particularly the guards. Ismaili said, according to Reuters, the announcement took many by surprise given its speed and timing, almost exactly 6 months after Soleimani died. One security official told Insider that the information made public by the U.S. might have made it easy for Iran to identify any informants involved. The official, who works in the Persian Gulf, requested anonymity because he lacks permission to discuss Iran with the media. These anonymous sources, gotta love them. We knew that Pazdaran was looking at logistics and security offices. Okay. We knew that Pazdaran was looking at logistics and security offices for the leak, people who would have known Soleimani's movements as part of their work, he said. Pazdaran is Persian slang for Revolutionary Guard. Oh, okay. If this is the Americans' guy, they really effed him with releasing all the details on how they tracked Soleimani, how they always knew when he was on the plane, that a source had confirmed he was definitely on the flight and had disembarked, referring to U.S. news reports at the time of the assassination that drew on inside information about how the strike was conducted. Bloomberg News published the story 3 days after the strike and cited 2 unnamed U.S. officials. NBC News published a detailed account 1 week after the strike and cited multiple U.S. officials with knowledge of the operation. According to the Washington Post, President Donald Trump gave his own detailed account of the strike at a meeting of donors at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida not long after. Wow, they really screwed this guy. Once they used him, they did not care. Look, if an official from the American government comes to you with some kind of offer, don't take that shit. Most of the time, they have to have some kind of leverage on you and twist your arm behind your back to make you do the things that they want. And so I recognize that not everybody can get out of dealing with them. But if you don't have to deal with them, don't, because they're a bunch of lying bastards and they will make sure that you get killed, or they won't care that you get killed once they've used you for what they need. That includes Americans too. So, don't think that this is just something they did to some Iranian dude that they don't care about. They do this to their own informants all the time. Moving on with the story. A Gulf-based source continued. How hard is it to figure out everyone who knew exactly when Soleimani was there? Arrest anyone who knew and interrogate them until someone confesses. A NATO official who closely monitors Iran, also speaking anonymously, said that Iran's behavior suggested that Mousavi Majid could have been one of its own intelligence officials. Ooh, double spy. This is how some countries would prefer to deal with catching a traitor in security services. You need to know what they gave up, when and how they were recruited as quickly as possible. Then a fast final trial not to embarrass the service. Mousavi Majid has not been identified as a member of the Iranian intelligence services or the Guard, but the Persian Gulf source agreed that from Iran's official behavior, that appeared most likely. So yeah, he's probably one of their dudes, and they're not trying to confess that one of their dudes fucked them over, and then the U.S. fucked that guy over. So hey, you know what? You live by espionage, you die by espionage. Who else would know where Soleimani was going to be? The guy didn't use a travel agent. And a fast, quiet trial because it was one of your own guys. Yeah. I'm sorry for that, dude. That sucks. It really sucks. Maybe they shouldn't have carried out this high-profile public assassination of this guy either, but, what am I going to do? So the WHO, the World Health Organization, is moonwalking, walking back their claims from yesterday that asymptomatic spread between individuals was rare. So apparently this is, so many people took this story and kind of ran with it and was like, well, look at these guys. They don't know what they're talking about, including me, which is what I think. So now they're trying to clarify that, well, we still really don't know what we're talking about. And that's what this article clarifies here. This comes from CNBC, written by Berkeley Loveless Jr. The World Health Organization walked back comments made Monday when one of its top scientists said transmission of the coronavirus by people who never develop symptoms is very rare, which drew skepticism from physicians across social media and others across social media. Yeah, others across social media is really who you need to worry about. The admission sent shockwaves throughout the world, much of which has been locked down for months for fear of spreading the virus to people who show no signs of the illness. No kidding, you crashed the world economy. Dr. Maria Van Kerkhove, who is head of the WHO's Emerging Diseases and Zoonosis Unit, said Tuesday that asymptomatic spread is a really complex question, and much is still unknown. We don't actually have an answer yet. Trust the experts, they don't know. Quote, I was responding to a question at the press conference. I wasn't stating a policy of the World Health Organization or anything like that. I was trying to articulate what we know, she said on a live Q&A streamed across multiple social media platforms. Quote, and in that, I used the phrase very rare, and I think that's misunderstanding to state that asymptomatic transmission globally is very rare. I was referring to a small subset of studies. Studies that show 16% of the population may be asymptomatic, she says. Some models developed by other scientists suggest as much as 40% of global transmission may be due to asymptomatic. So now we're walking it back. Okay. Let's see. Where was I? Some models developed by scientists suggest that as much as 40% of global transmission is due to asymptomatic individuals, she said, clarifying her comments. Some estimates of around 40% transmission may be due to asymptomatic, but those are from models. I didn't include that in my answer yesterday, but wanted to make sure I covered that here. A majority of transmission is from people who have symptoms and are spreading it, through infectious droplets. But there is a subset of people who don't develop symptoms. To truly understand how many people don't have symptoms, we actually don't have an answer yet. Whew, these guys do not know what they're talking about. Oh my gosh. Okay. While asymptomatic spread of the coronavirus does occur, a portion of asymptomatic individuals who transmit the virus remains a big open question. Dr. Mark Ryan, executive director of the World Health Organization Emergencies Program, said during the Q&A, "There is much to be answered." Quote, "There is much to be answered on this. There is much that is unknown." So the further you read, it's just a bunch of these World Health Organization's doctors saying, well, we don't know. We tell you things. We don't really know if they're true or not. I'm sorry. We go with things based on models. We don't know if they're true or not. Are you done listening to this? Because I am. I certainly am. I've been conducting my life normally probably for the last 3 weeks or so, and I'm sorry. None of this inspires confidence in me, and God forbid something does come down the pipeline, like a real room clearing fart, like a real ass plague comes down the line. No one is going to buy this shit anymore. No one. Because this is like hurricanes. You tell people in Florida every year, it's the big one, it's the big one, it's the big one. And when the big one finally happens, they don't give a shit. They're out on the beach because you've told them so many times and it turned out to be nothing. Yo. We're going to move on. In an article from Nature, a bizarre nearby star offers clues to origins of the mysterious fast radio burst. So I don't know if you've heard the story at all, but we've been getting a regular burst coming from space, a radio burst that comes out every 157 days, like regularly. So that's interesting, right? That it's on a regular beat of every 157 days. So the first fast radio burst detected in our galaxy comes from a magnetized star and could help explain the cosmic enigma. I just thought that this was not, it's not political, it's not coronavirus, so, read something interesting about science for once. For a fraction of a second in late April, a hypermagnetized star in the Milky Way suddenly blasted out radio energy. Now scientists say that this sudden strange blip could help explain one of astronomy's biggest puzzles. What powers the hundreds of other mysterious fast radio bursts, FRBs, that have been spotted much further away in the universe? The star, known as SGR 1935 plus 1254, is a magnetar, a dense spinning ember left behind after a supernova and wrapped in intense magnetic fields. Wow, so it's like the cooling ember of a star. That's cool. Many astronomers think that the fast radio bursts, brief but powerful cosmic flashes that flare for milliseconds, come from the magnetars. There we go. But haven't been able to show the link. I wouldn't say that it's the nail in the coffin, but we figured out that fast radio bursts come from magnetars, says Emily Petroff, an astronomer at the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. But it is far from the most promising evidence that we found. Preliminary papers describing the burst, which is the first to be detected in the Milky Way, have flooded the ARXIV preprint server in the recent days. Until now, the closest known fast radio burst happened around 150 million parsecs, 490 million light years from Earth. This is pretty far away. The magnetar is in our galaxy just about 10,000 parsecs away, making it close enough for astronomers to have a great view as it sizzles with activity. Here is something that gets close to the insane intensity of cosmic FBRs, but that has been happening not very far away. It sounds like something you want to happen far away from you, but it's a fantastic opportunity to learn. So yeah, this is really cool. This is something that we pick up this regular radio signal every 157 days. I think that's really interesting. I didn't know that it came from the ember of a dead star. That's really, really cool. One of the theories about how the universe will end is infinite expansion, resulting eventually in heat death, meaning that all the stars eventually burn out and all their little embers go out, and then one day there's just no more light left in the universe. It's called heat death. It's terribly depressing, But I think stuff like this lends more toward the heat death theory than the big crutch theory. But you'll have to tell me what you think. Friend me on Twitter and argue with me about how the universe will end. I really enjoy talking about science. But moving on to the next story. Dallas Morning News. Signet, which is a basically like a mega corporation, is deciding to permanently close about 400 jewelry stores, including Zales, Kay, and Jared. So there will be no more kisses beginning with Kay, and no more he can't go to Jared anymore. So I guess y'all aren't gonna get any more engagement rings. I don't know what to tell you. They're probably all blood diamonds anyway. But let's read. Like many U.S. retailers, Signet, a parent company, that's what I meant to say, not a mega corporation, a parent company of the largest mall-based jewelry stores, said that this year started out great with a strong Valentine's Day. But then the pandemic, forced closings led to the first quarter losses of $291 million. Jeez, how much money are people spending on crappy mall jewelry? $291 million lost, a 40.5% sales decline to $852 million. You're making $852 million and you can't keep your business open? Jeez. I'm being snarky, sorry. Now the company says it will permanently close almost 400 stores. The chain of 3,200 stores said that about 150 stores in the US and Canada and 80 in the UK were temporarily closed during the pandemic but won't reopen. That sucks. Sucks for the employees. An additional 150 stores will close, the stores that are currently open that will close, as leases are renewed and negotiation with landlords continued. Spokesman David Buffard declined to say where the first stores are closing, but confirmed that they are across the company's brands. The chain had closed more than 200 stores last year and 150 in 2018. Yikes. So COVID ended up being the nail in the coffin for a lot of companies that were just sort of clinging on. The jewelry retailer, parent to Kay, Zales, Jared, H. Samuel, Peoples, and Piercing Pagoda, pivoted to its e-commerce business when stores were forced to close during the coronavirus, Signet Chief Executive Officer Gina Doros said. But the distribution center for its main online brand, James Allen, was closed in New York during the stay-at-home orders. That slowed its e-commerce sales. Wow, these people just got hit on every level. Which only increased by 6.7% in the first 3 months of the year. We are gathering valuable insights on customer behaviors and plan to use these learnings to enhance our competitive advantage and emerge stronger from the crisis. Signet acquired the Irving-based Zales Corp in 2014, putting the fiercely competitive Zales and Kay Jewelers brands under the same corporate ownership. Some operations remained in Texas. A year ago, Signet moved its repair and manufacturing operation to Akron, Ohio. Well, that's what you get for moving to Ohio, right? Resulting in the elimination of 180 jobs in the last Kalinas office. Yeah, this sucks. Like, I know they're brands or whatever, but it's like, we've been hearing the K, every kiss begins with K, and he went to Jared. You've been hearing those commercials for forever. So it's kind of the end of an era to see, my engagement ring came from Jared. So yeah, it's a little disheartening to see something that has been around, something you're familiar with that has been around for such a long time, to go by the wayside like this so easily. And it turns out that asymptomatic spread might not even really be a main problem. The model itself only predicts that 40% of people, and that's a model. And so they might have killed Zales, Kay, and Jared over a false model. Anyway, moving on. This one comes from NBC News. North Korea says that it has severed all communications with South Korea. No longer one Korea. They were getting there. They were trying. Trump tried to get them talking to each other, but I guess it didn't pan out. Let's read more. The decision carried further significance because it is attributed to Kim Yo-jong, the sister of the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Uh-oh. Yeah, we've been hearing about this sister. We haven't even heard that he's okay and kicking around, so we don't know. But if the sister was running things, how long would she let people think that he was alive? That's, moving on, moving on. North Korea announced Tuesday that it was axing all communications with South Korea, a move analysts believe could be an attempt to manufacture a crisis and force concessions from its neighbor. Don't give in, South Korea. The decision carried further significance because it was attributed in part to Kim Yo Jong, the sister of the North Korean leader Kim Jong Un, who has risen to prominence in recent weeks. North Korea said that it is suspending contact in anger at activist defectors who have fled to the south. So, why is it South Korea's fault that people are running away from your country? Your country sucks. If you don't want people to run away from it, try not sucking so bad. So it's angry at activist defectors who fled to the south and routinely fly balloons back over the border carrying propaganda leaflets. Yeah, I mean, I would. Many experts suspect the underlying reason is to attempt to gain leverage in inter-Korean negotiations that have stalled since a series of high-profile summits in 2018. During a meeting, Kim Yo-jong, another senior North Korean official, Kim Young-chol, described South Korea as the enemy. Ooh, female dictator. Feminism has brought us female dictators. They said their neighborhood had angered the North Korean people. Oh, their neighbor. They said their neighbor had angered the North Korean people with, like, y'all care what your people think. Sorry. Like, they said their neighbor had angered the North Korean people with his treacherous and cunning behavior and driven the inter-Korean relations to catastrophe, according to North Korea's state-run media. Cutting off all communication lines between the country's leaders and the militaries was the first step before it completely shut down all contact means with South Korea, it said. South Korea confirmed Tuesday morning that North Korea did not answer its military hotline for the first time since it was restored in 2018, according to the Defense Ministry spokeswoman. My bad, sister. The communications line between South and North Korea must be maintained as agreed, an official from South Korea Unification Ministry said in a briefing. Although Kim Yo-jong has been in the public eye for a while, representing her brother at the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea, she gained new prominence following several statements this year, condemning South Korea's live fire exercise in March and praising a letter from President Donald Trump to her brother. When there are rumors that Kim Jong-un was in ill health, his sister was touted as a potential successor. She appears to have long been trusted by her brother, and John Nilsson Wright, a senior researcher and fellow at the London think tank Chatham House, quote, have been put in charge of propaganda and publicity for the regime. She necessarily is an important figure in the power structure. I mean, she's part of the family, right? It's a whole family thing. Last week, she called the North Korean defectors who fled to South Korea human scum and mongrel dogs. Yeah, why would they want to leave? For flying propaganda leaflets back across the border. Communication lines between the Koreas have been cut and restored again during the previous periods of tension, and some believe that North Korea is deploying a similar tactic now. The country's last summit with Trump broke down without an agreement, and subsequent negotiations have seen no progress toward North Korea giving up its nuclear weapons, as Washington hopes that it will. But the stalemate has also left North Korea with no closer to ending the crippling Western sanctions that continue to throttle its economy. It had tried to pressure South Korea to take a softer line than the White House, but to no avail. Can North Korea continue to raise tensions to get concessions it wants anytime soon? Tweeted Ramon Pancho Padro, an associate professor at King's College London. South Korea, quote, isn't going to break the sanctions regime. Short and mid-range missile tests barely register these days, and ICBM tests risks ending any hope of a deal with Trump, he added. Referring to an intercontinental ballistics missile, he said North Korea isn't in a good place. So, I mean, we don't know. We don't know what's going on over there because the sister is in charge, maybe. He has maybe had some kind of operation or heart attack. He might be dead. We don't know what's going on. Well, we know that this woman seems to have her hand on things, that she seems to be running things. So, this is not a good development. You know, I think that this article is maybe hopeful. It's being hopeful and saying, well, you know, they're trying to get more on negotiations and stuff like that. But I don't know if little sister here has come into power, which really surprises me. They seem very patriarchal. That you know, but she's in the family, so you know, I don't really know how it works, but I think that it's a little hopeful. I think it's that there's a new boss in town and she's asserting herself, and she might be a strong's the wrong word, a tougher leader than her brother, for sure. So we've got the last article here, you guys, and then I'm gonna wrap it up with the thing that I'm thankful for. George Floyd and Derek Chauvin bumped heads while working at a nightclub together, says a former coworker. That's some shit. So we've heard stories coming out that these guys knew each other. And I left this to last because I think this is the one I kind of wanted to remain with people, that these guys knew each other. This wasn't just a case of like a cop and a guy he had never seen before having a poor interaction. They knew each other. And that's just something that's just not getting brought up in this whole thing of like, oh, police abuse of power, police brutality, which, believe me, I am the number one person who's like, hey, maybe we try private police. But it does stand to mention these dudes knew one another. And not only did they know one another, they didn't like each other. Something to know. So let's read. As mourners in Houston honor the life of George Floyd in Minneapolis, CBS News is learning new details from a nightclub co-worker about the history between Floyd and Derek Chauvin, the former officer who was charged in Floyd's death. Not only did they know each other, but a former co-worker says that he had a history of friction. Floyd and Chauvin both worked security at a nightclub at the same time. Co-worker David Pinney said the two men had a history. They bumped heads, Pinney said. How? The CBS News asked. It had a lot to do with Derek being extremely aggressive within the club with some of the patrons, which was an issue, Pinney explained. You don't say. The Floyd family says they believe what happened on May 25th was part personal. Their lawyer has called Chauvin to be charged with first-degree murder because we believe he knew who George Floyd was. And that this is something we mentioned before when we were talking about the fact that they were charging him with second-degree and third-degree murder, that it's difficult to prove intent. This goes to motive. This can prove intent. So this could escalate his charge to a first-degree murder charge, depending on if they can establish that there was this connection here. Is there any doubt in your mind that Derek Chauvin knew George Floyd? CBS News asked Pinney. No. He knew him, the coworker confirmed. How well did he know him? CBS News asked. I would say pretty well, Pinney replied. Maya Santamaria, the owner of the now protest-torched club, described how Chauvin treated black patrons when she talked to CBS News for the upcoming special Justice for All. Santamaria said she had been paying Chauvin, and when he was off duty, to sit in his squad car outside the El Nuevo Rodeo for 17 years. Oh, wow. He did that for a while. She said Floyd was working as a security guard in the club frequently in the last year. In particularly, they both worked on Tuesday nights when the club had a popular weekly dance competition. Do you think Derek Chauvin, do you think Derek had a problem with black people? CBS News asked. I think he was afraid and intimidated, Santamaria said. By black folks, CBS News clarified. Yeah, Santamaria confirmed. Interesting. As part of the investigation continues, other cities across the country are considering police reforms. On Tuesday, New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, we've heard from Cuomo now. Seems like he's been quiet for a couple of days. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo said he would support sweeping reform measures in his state, including a ban on police chokeholds. It's a moment to do real reform and change, Cuomo said. City officials in Minneapolis are discussing defunding or dismantling the police department. What happened there has sparked demands for a new law enforcement model, but even those who support the idea aren't sure what that really means. Yeah. Yeah. So if these two dudes knew each other, they knew each other and they had conflict with each other previous to this incident, that really can escalate the charge to a first degree murder charge. Um, yeah, so we've been hearing they know each other. This nightclub owner definitely seems to think that, Derek Chauvin had a problem with black people, that he was aggressive, overly aggressive, and aggressive with the patrons, and that he and Derek had previously butted heads, and that they knew, or him and George, Mr. Floyd, knew each other and had butted heads previously. That's an interesting piece of information that I'm pretty sure will come up in the trial if it's vetted and it turns out to be correct. So, and something to know, something to be informed of in the thing in the trial going forward. I don't know how much of that we're going to be privy to. I have the impression that it's going to be like the OJ trial. They're going to put this guy on public trial for everyone to see, because this is something that has involved everyone in this country emotionally on some level. So I don't really see them being able to, like, or maybe they won't, I would as a measure of transparency, so that everyone can see what is happening here. I mean, they had that trial for that woman that, like, starved her stepdaughter to death, and that was put on publicly. That was on every news channel. That happened in Georgia, though, so I don't know if you guys saw that. But they need to have this trial be public, so everyone knows what was asked, who was questioned, what was said, and how they came to their determination. Because if they find this guy not guilty, if you think the riots that we've seen thus far were bad, and then they turn around in a non-public trial and declare this guy not guilty, we're gonna see the country get burned to the freaking ground. I mean, like, it's gonna be insane. So I really think, for the sake of, just everyone, they need to make this trial public. That's just my personal opinion. So, it's Wednesday, and on Wednesdays we wear pink, and we also tell everybody what we are thankful for. So, I would like to say that I am thankful for medical technology, especially ultrasounds, and then the wonderful ultrasound technicians who know how to use that, because it's something that keeps me personally healthy. So a lot of times I am very negative about too much modernity, too much technology. I think a lot of times technology can rob from us some of the essential skills that we need, some of the basic skills that we need for our, like, daily survival. But in the case of medical technology, I'm very, very happy to live in an advanced time, as opposed to maybe 100 or 200 or further back years ago, when these type of things were not available to us. So that's what I'm thankful for. Tomorrow, Edgar should be back, so you guys will be relieved to have your regular program back. But I appreciate everybody who came and hung out with me and listened to me while I read the news to you, and suffered through my inability to pronounce anybody's name and my hot takes. I really appreciate you guys so much for coming out, and I will see you next time.